Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. So on this episode of the podcast, we continue our ongoing look at entrepreneurship in the Executive MBA program. We catch up with a recent graduate from our class of 2020, Jake Corbin, to talk about his startup, Vino Shares. So without further ado, here's my interview with Jake Corbin. Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
So first of all, congratulations on your recent graduation. Does it feel real?
I guess it's a little surreal. I mean, with all the COVID stuff going on and the moving to pure virtual, it definitely kind of was a little bit of an anticlimactic finish. But yeah, I think it's starting to slowly sink in.
So as you have adjusted to your new life post Darden, how are you feeling the extra time in your schedule now that you don't have distance classes and case reading and all these kinds of things?
I'm honestly just keeping busy with work, and we have our startup that we're kind of doing on the side, so that certainly has freed up more time to focus on Vino Shares and try to grow that business using everything we learned while at Darden.
Well, we invited you on the podcast to talk about many things, your background, but also that startup, Vino Shares. I want to check in real quick before we go too much further. Obviously, congratulations again on your graduation, but how are you and your family holding up at this time? Are y'all doing okay?
Yeah, we're doing great. Obviously been blessed to keep my day job. So been very fortunate to weather that storm. The transition to working remote, though, I wasn't really sure if I would like it or not. I think I've kind of adapted and I like it. And I actually spend more time with the kids now, which I think is actually kind of one of those silver linings. So I think the family's really excited to start socializing again with people other than me. But other than that, I think we're doing well.
So let's talk about your background. And I'm so glad to hear y'all are doing well and you're hanging in there. What did you do before you came to Darden? What's your background?
So prior to coming to Darden, I had kind of transitioned out of the Marine Corps in 2016. I had transitioned into more of a technology-focused role, basically just leading software development teams at Erie Insurance here in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I'd been leading some teams and doing some work there right up until the time I started Darden.
Do you always have a passion for software? As you thought about that transition out of the military, how did you find that path?
Ironically, I always had a rather disdain for software and technology. I grew up kind of like the farm boy, working outside, doing all that stuff, not really doing anything with technology. And then I went in the Marine Corps. But kind of as I made that transition, I realized the world revolves around technology today. And I think for any business leader to be successful, you have to have a sound understanding of technology and how it impacts the world. So I decided to take it on, head first and just dive right in and try to learn everything I can.
Imagine we have a few listeners who are in the military contemplating a transition. What was that process like for you? I know it can be harder. You move out of this world that, you always know your next step and you can kind of see the progression and you know what roles are out there. And it's easy to find sort of where you're going next into a much more ambiguous world. What was that transition like?
I think it was definitely a very challenging time. I was fortunate enough that I had a job in the military working in aviation, supply, and logistics. So there's a lot of transferable skills that I was fortunate enough to build while in the military. So I think that provided me a bit of comfort. And the military did provide a lot of good resources. And then there are a lot of private organizations that have a ton of resources to support transitioning veterans. So the daunting piece was trying to translate things and understanding, what types of jobs should I be looking for, and managing some of those expectations. So learning how to do informational interviews was really important, and learning how to translate your military skill to civilian skill was really important. But overall, I'd say it was a decent experience.
How did you learn those things? Was it just trial and error, or did you have friends along the way who helped you? Web resources? I'm curious.
A lot of trial and error. I took it. One strategy I took was I'm going to take every single interview I can, whether I want the job or not, just to get practice interviewing. Um, and I definitely found that to be helpful because I fumbled through quite a few interviews before I started kind of getting into a groove and understanding it. And by the time I got to jobs I really wanted, I was much more comfortable in that process. But there were a lot of great organizations that supported me. So Deloitte has the core leadership program, which they took us down to their Deloitte University in Dallas for a few days and kind of put us through the ringer of how to transition out of the military and learn corporate speak and do all those things. And that was a very helpful program. I also did some education. Harvard Business School has their HBR online kind of courses. I think it's also called CORE. Seems to be a common naming convention, which kind of helped me learn some of the basics of business speak, sort of.
So any additional tips you might offer for folks who are in that? It sounds like there's great resources out there and some ways you can think about sort of learning more about business. Any final tips you might offer?
I just really emphasize, leverage the resources that are out there. There's a lot of companies and a lot of people want to see veterans successfully transition. And so don't be afraid to ask for help and don't be afraid to kind of put yourself out there and take advantage of those things.
I've also always been struck as I've talked to the candidates in our program who are making this transition or who have already made this transition or are reflecting on sort of the move from the military world to the private civilian sector. That networking plays a really important role to your earlier point. And people perhaps underestimate the strength of their existing network. So you start to drill down and you talk with people. They have friends who've already made these transitions, or they have friends that are currently going through the same process. And I always encourage students to think about people first. Who in your life can be helpful and help you think about this? And even just from an informational networking standpoint, who is doing something that sounds like something that you might want to do, or who already successfully transitioned and probably has some lessons learned along the way.
I agree. And I actually think that's a great point to bring up because that's probably one of the things veterans are the worst at. In the military, there's really not a whole lot of, it's a small community, everybody knows everybody, but networking as a skill isn't something that's really, harped on. Your path in the military is very much laid out. And so I think, and I also think it's hard. I think it's not innately in us to want to ask for help and to reach out and do this whole networking thing. It feels a little just, I don't know, that just challenging. I find a lot of veterans for that idea of like reaching out and trying to leverage a network to get somewhere. So it's a skill that needs to be developed, and it is crucial to, I think everybody's success.
It's a great point, and I think a lot of people struggle with networking because they tend to think of it as a transactional conversation, right? I wouldn't be contacting this person but for my interest in a role with their organization, or but for me, quote unquote, needing something from them. But that's not really what you're asking at all. You're asking for someone's help, as you note, and you will ideally continue to cultivate and maintain that relationship. This is not just a one-time conversation. These people, when they become part of your network, ideally you're keeping them posted on where you are in that process and circling back with them. So it doesn't have to be transactional. I'm wondering about your decision to pursue an MBA. So it sounds like you make this transition. You were doing some things to learn about business. When did an MBA pop up on your radar?
I think it was always kind of on my radar, simply because as I was making the transition initially, one of the number one things people were telling me to do was, go get your MBA. That's the best way to do it, particularly because I, at the time, was largely leaning towards a career in finance. So that was pretty much the universal advice that people gave me. So just go get your MBA. Sometimes it's easier said than done. I had, a wife and kids and didn't really have an option at the time to just, stop working for 2 years and go get an MBA. So I kind of looked for alternative paths and thought that the best thing for me to do is to get into the workforce and start trying to find some success and learn some things. And so I chose to go the path of taking the job, when I got into the job, I did manage to find some success and managed to move up a little bit and got to the point where the positions I was looking to take, having a graduate level degree was becoming more relevant. And at that point, my company was good enough to support my pursuit of an MBA. So at that point, I just looked at, what was the best MBA I could possibly get given my current situation. And so naturally I landed on Darden.
I was curious what I remember our conversation, and we have a lot of interaction for the listeners of the podcast. One of the best things about recruiting for the Executive MBA program is just how well we get to know candidates through the process of research and applying and maybe ultimately deciding to accept an offer at Darden. A lot of those relationships start with a phone call, and I'm wondering what about Darden really resonated with you?
I think a lot of it was, I liked the pedagogy. I liked the case method. I liked the conversations I had with you and some of the other staff were very welcoming and inclusive, and had kind of a different tone than some of the other schools I had been talking to. So the environment, the education, and also the rankings about teaching faculty, I felt like the professors were really dedicated to us and our growth. So those things are very important to me. Geographically, it also was a conveniently located place, so that helped as well.
And so now you are on the other side of the experience. You've completed the 21 months of the program. You graduated. When you look back on who you were before Darden and who you are now, how did you grow? How did you change?
I think a lot of it was the confidence to pursue an entrepreneurial activity was not necessarily there before. I mean, I had technically started the company before, but it was really more of just a hobby, I guess you could say at that point. I was really dedicated to being, as they talk about them in Darden, like I was a climber / switcher. Like I was trying to move up the corporate ladder and potentially, change companies to do that or whatever. But over the course of Darden and learning about, the broader context of a business and running a business and executive leadership and all these responsibilities, it really kind of inspired me, especially working with my other peers who are entrepreneurs, to make a go of the entrepreneurial thing.
So tell us about your business. What is it, and how did the idea come to you?
So we created Vino Shares, and it is a digital platform that enables consumers to obtain premium wines through curated experiences. And we do that by partnering with restaurants and wineries to help them move products that they already have. So we're really kind of an extension of their e-commerce direct-to-consumer strategy. And then we leverage various pieces of our digital platform to curate the experiences. So we have, to get wines by the glass in a restaurant, we use crowdsourcing. We create digital content to do wines by the bottle at your home. And we kind of look for all the gaps in people's ability to obtain really great wines and try to solve those problems.
It's an interesting idea. I'm wondering, are you an enophile? Are you a big wine fan?
I'm glad you know the term. Not everybody knows that term. In fact, the other day we were shooting a video and I had them use the term enophile, and somebody's like, does anybody know what that is?
I should say, in the interest of full disclosure, Jake, I worked during the holidays as a younger person. From the time I was 17 until I was about 23, 24, I worked at a wine shop every Christmas. And so while I'm not a wine enthusiast, which sounds weird given all the time I spent working around people who were, you do pick up a lot. I always tell people I know enough just to be dangerous in a conversation. So I do know the word enophile though. So, but I'm probably a slightly different audience than your average layperson.
Okay. But yeah, so we are, we like to consider ourselves enophiles, and we hope to serve a community of fellow enophiles.
And that was the inspiration for the idea. I mean, so a lot of wine fans out there. How did you get from we're wine fans to I think we should start this business?
So it started really when I moved to Erie, Pennsylvania. We moved here, didn't know a lot of people. Pennsylvania has a lot of kind of strict laws in terms of wine distribution. It's all controlled by the Liquor Control Board, and we just generally had a hard time finding great wines. And then we met friends who had similar interests in wine, and we started sharing wine, hence the Vino Shares, and then thought, well, you know what, this is really great experience for us. How do we expand this to more people? And it just kind of snowballed from there into, how do we make this into a real business?
And so you've gone to Darden now. You mentioned having confidence to kind of take this idea forward and to get more serious about your entrepreneurial endeavor. How are you using your Darden experience to think about this entrepreneurial endeavor?
So to tie back to our earlier theme about networking, yet leveraging the Darden network, my classmates and the alumni to make the connections for various aspects of the business that we need help with. Humbling ourselves, making those requests for help for marketing, for financing, and all these different aspects of running the business. Darden helped us put the framework together through all of our classes. But, we were able to build the business plan and kind of the strategy and how we're going to grow the business. And now it's really kind of in execution. And a lot of the execution comes down to knowing the right people and building your team and leading that team.
I'm curious about wine as an industry right now because there's a lot of competition for those dollars for people who are looking for potent potable, to borrow the Jeopardy phrase. So there's craft beer, there's craft cocktails, there's wine. Do you see a growing interest in wine, or is it just kind of stable? I mean, from your business vantage point, are you actively trying to grow interest in wine? Is that also part of the ambition of the startup?
I would love to grow interest in wine, particularly among younger generations. If you look at the data, wine has been increasing in consumption in both volume and dollar value for 20 plus years. Except at the end of 19, it was actually starting to dip. The millennial generation hasn't been taking up wine quite as fast as I think a lot of the pundits thought they would, and the older generations are transitioning into retirement and having less disposable income to spend on wine. So there is some challenges there, but a trend in the industry that we've always looked to take advantage of is they call it premiumization, where the dip in volume is really about the lower end of the spectrum, and premium wines have not experienced the dip and have continued to actually grow. And so at Vino Shares, we're really focused on premium wine. We're trying to make it accessible to more and more people. So we're trying to take advantage of the fact that segment of the population is growing. The people who are drinking wine want to drink better wine. And there's also there's certain romance to wine. There's a story behind it, and trying to take advantage of building those experiences around it. So it's a little bit more than just drinking wine.
So as you were getting started, you had mentioned that you work with restaurants. What was that first pitch like to a restaurant? Like, hey, we've got this idea. Was it a warm call? Was it a cold call? How did they respond to the idea?
Fortunately, my business partner he owns a winery in Erie, so he had a lot of the relationships. So there was definitely that help of having a pre-existing relationship. But so we just went in and we pitched. It's like, all right, you have premium wine on your list, high margin product. You don't move it very fast. How about you leverage our platform and we will ensure we move your highest margin wines quickly. And we won't charge anybody any money unless we successfully do it. And so with that, they were kind of like, well, why not? So we did it. We take the restaurant's wine, we put it on the platform. We blast it out there, we market it, we kind of put a spin on it, tell the story on the wine, and we curate the experience. And we were able to move their wines that they weren't otherwise moving. And from there, we kind of were able to use that story and that experience to get more and more restaurants on the platform.
So where do things stand now? I mean, we talked before we started recording the conversation. COVID-19, people are not going out to eat in the same way. Now you are seeing some states open for outdoor seating, but it won't be the same numbers. A lot of to go right now. What does your business look like right now? What are you seeing from restaurants and demand for wine?
Yeah, that COVID definitely threw a wrench in our plans. The lack of participation in on premise wine consumption really kind of made us dead in the water there for a little while. So, as any good entrepreneurs, we decided to take this as an opportunity to pivot a little bit and expand our product offering. And so we decided to launch a virtual tasting product. And with this product, it's not by the glass, it's by the bottle. We ship it to your home, and the value we add for the wineries and some retailers who are looking to partner with us is that we try to recreate the experience we were having in the restaurant in your home. We create video content. We create an online message board where you can interact with us real time. You can interact with the winemaker. They participate on the platform. And so you can have kind of a communal educational experience while you're enjoying your wine, and build your education and build your community.
So how large is that community now, or how do you feel like it's grown since you started the business? One restaurant, this is what we're doing, to where you are now. Have you seen good adoption? Have you seen people interested in this kind of content?
So we had seen pretty steady adoption of the product in the restaurants. As we're making the pivot, so we're actually getting ready to launch the virtual product. So unfortunately, it hasn't actually launched yet. So it should come out in the next week or so. And if that is successful, I'll definitely like to report back to you on how the adoption's been.
No, that's great. And I recognize that everything is very much in transition right now. I wonder how you find the wines that you choose to feature or highlight for people who are interested in Vino Shares.
A lot of it is I just spend a lot of time reading about wine, so that helps. And we have trusted sources of where we like to go and talk to people at wines and people in the industry that we follow, and we try to stay on top of trends in the industry. But we're really trying to focus on grower, producer, terroir driven wine. We want to highlight the artistry of the winemaker in the process, and the land and the climate and the environment that goes into making the wine. So we're not looking to move mass produced wines. We really are looking for kind of those really special niche wines that we can share with people.
Are you drawn to the story first or to the finished product first? How does it, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of both. I'm curious about how you start sort of narrowing the list.
I think I usually start with the wine and then seek the story. But if I find a good story, then I'll try the wine. So it kind of depends. A lot of times it starts with the wine, but every once in a while you'll hear a story about something somebody's trying to accomplish or some grand challenge, and it draws you in to find wine. I mean, I went through a phase probably a few months back where I was really interested in trying wines from Northern Africa and the Middle East. And so a lot of that was, just some reading and research I'd been doing about the origins of wine and historical winemaking processes. And so that maybe started with the story and then led me to some really interesting wines that were amazing. But a lot of the times it starts with the glass when I'm drinking.
That's interesting. I wonder, so there's notable regions where wine has come from forever, but it's a big world, and wines are produced in a number of places. I wonder if the internet has, sometimes I think about this with being a music fan. There's just so much music to discover because it's now so quote unquote easy to discover it. You just type something in and you just YouTube, Wormhole, or Spotify. Is it overwhelming, the amount of wine that's out there? Like, how do you figure out prioritization as you're trying to navigate, oh my gosh, this infinite universe seemingly of wine, maybe even premium wine?
think a lot of it is, yeah, I find that I have this like wandering path through wine where I focus, and maybe it's similar to you in music, but I'll focus on a genre, whether it be a varietal or a country, and then I'll get really into that. And the internet does provide a wealth of information, and then, I'll do that, and then something will catch my eye, and then I just find that I meander through these themes of wine, and the internet helps. The challenge with wine, and this is where we try to help with this challenge, is getting the wine. It's alcohol, heavily regulated industry, and so you could read everything about all these amazing wines, but sometimes obtaining them is really challenging.
So, flash forward 10, 15, 20 years. I recognize the business is still evolving, and obviously very much so at this particular moment because of COVID-19. But where would you like to be with Vino Shares? What would be your ideal, do you think?
I think it'd be great if every wine drink in the world had Vino Shares app on their phones, and they come to us first for their premium wines.
Is it tough to crack the app market to get that mind share?
I think it's challenging, coming from non-marketing backgrounds as a team, it's certainly an interesting world to try to break into and get that mind share and get the audience. But I think people are always interested to try new things and experiment. And, the thing about wine as a product has been around for thousands of years. So there has been no waning of interest in wine as a product. So I think that helps. So we'll just try to, get out there and add value to people's lives. And as long as we're adding value, I think it'll catch on.
So Jake, we typically ask a same last question of all our guests here. What advice would you have for prospective students about Darden? What would you share with them?
I would say maximize your experience with your peers, build relationships, whether it's your learning team or just a group of learning teams, because it seems like the learning teams kind of started to build, and at the end there's like massive learning teams. It's really, embrace the people, because that network, that the experiences that they've had and can share with you, that's really where a lot of the value is. I mean, the classroom is wonderful, the professors are great, be prepared and do all that great stuff, but really maximize your time with the people.
It's so funny. A couple of your classmates were on here, Jonas Porcar Ferrer and Bob and Patel. That's also what they shared. Maybe that's a common graduation.
Well, they were on my learning team, so.
It comes full circle. That's amazing. Yes. So if someone wants to find out about Vino Shares, how would they do that?
VinoShares.com is the website. We have a Facebook page, a Twitter feed, Instagram, and so they can look us up.
All right. I'm going to ask maybe one last question. Any wine tips for our listeners?
We're coming into summer, and maybe it's a little cliche, white wines in the summer, but I explore some of the white wines of Spain and northern Italy. I think they do not get the appreciation and traction that they deserve.
Well, Jake, thank you for that. This is our first ever wine tip here on the ExecMBA podcast. It's been a pleasure catching up with you about your startup and about your Darden experience. And good luck with Vino Shares. We'll have to circle back to hear how things are going with the new sort of digital delivery model.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Brett. I really appreciate being with you.
And that was my interview with Jake Corbin, a recent graduate from our Executive MBA class of 2020. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA at darden.virginia.edu. And until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.